This podcast is sponsored by the White Bear Micropub in Southbourne-on-Sea. No loud music, no TVs, and no ringtones. Just good ale, good conversation, and good times. Just like a pub used to be. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.
Here come the cherries and we're heading for the top of the tree. Bournemouth is a team that's going to show Division 3. Here come the leaders and the scorers at the Saturday, showing how to win the Southern way. So we sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. While you're out there winning, hear the shouting and the singing. We sing, come on Bournemouth, come on Bournemouth. Here come the Cherries, here come the Cherries, here come the Cherries, number one.
Hello and welcome to All Departments. Our beloved Cherries went down 3-0 to Tottenham on our first ever appearance at White Hart Lane on Sunday. Here to reflect on a difficult afternoon in North London is Stephen Allen. Stephen, how are you?
Yeah, not too bad, Michael.
So, it was a long afternoon against a Spurs team that I thought were at the top of their game on Sunday. There isn't too many positive things to take out of the game, apart from, well, we knew this already, but thank goodness we've got those 38 points.
Yeah, it was a very long afternoon. It went wrong from the very start, and didn't really get much better. Yeah, I think personally, I think we're safe. I think 38 will be plenty. Plus, we've still got a few decent opportunities coming up to get some more points. So I think we'll be absolutely fine. And yeah, there was an air of the players think that as well, I think.
Yeah, we'll come on to that. So prior to the game, I was stood in the concourse at White Hart Lane talking to a few fellow Cherries and, as usual, speculating on the team. Quite a few of the guys I was talking to were quite adamant that Eddie wouldn't bring Harry Arter back for the game, what with the international break coming up and him having been out. But he did, and obviously Dan Gosling dropped out. Perhaps on reflection, Eddie would have waited till after the international break to bring Arter in because, well, like many others, it was it wasn't a game he starred in, was it? No.
I was a bit surprised, I must admit, for the reasons you gave. Was it worth risking him? Plus, I thought it was a bit harsh on Gosling. I think many times he's been my player of the season this season. He was absolutely, for instance, I thought he was tremendous away at Newcastle. Don't quite know what happened at the Swansea game. I know it appears he wasn't injured, and he obviously got taken off at half time, having been booked, and then put in a sort of a rash challenge just before half time. I still found that one a little bit odd, but nonetheless. I mean, there was also, I think, with retrospect, or with hindsight, there was the possibility of playing a 5-man midfield yesterday, which might have been a good idea. But, 4-4-2 has been working for us the last few games. So, I suppose Eddie thought we'll just carry on with it. Plus, I mean, the other thing is Eddie's loyalty, which is to a lot of players, which is quite renowned. So tricky decision who'd be a manager. But yeah, I don't think Arter did have his best game, and of course he ended up being substituted. I mean, I don't think he's really had a great season all in all. I mean, obviously there's been his sort of well documented injuries and his problems. But yeah, I think he's not been at his best. I can't think in too many games at all this season.
I think you raise an interesting point about Gosling, which only occurred to me as you were talking. That he went off at half time against Swansea, and we all assumed, having pulled back Mo Barrow and been booked, I mean, it was a yellow card, that Eddie withdrew him to make sure that he didn't get any further punishment from the referee in the second half. But then he's not in the first 11 for the game against Spurs, which I think was generally a surprise because, like you say, he's loyal. The team won after, well, I don't think he was 100% match fit yesterday. And not only that, when Eddie did take Harry Arter off, he brought Eunan O'Kane on, which made me think just a moment ago that maybe there's more to it. There could be something else, couldn't there, that we don't know about that perhaps is limiting Gosling from getting back into the team, whether that's something to do with him or something that's gone on. I mean, it's impossible to say. Usually there's little whispers about stuff like this. I haven't seen anything.
No.
But who knows? I guess we'll... Well, we might find out. We might never find out.
Yeah. And to be fair, I thought O'Kane played quite well when he came on against Swansea in the second half. I don't think he was particularly bad yesterday either. I thought he did some good things, and I've always rated him as a player. And he needs game time as well. But yeah, it was a bit odd that Gosling didn't come on at half-time yesterday. I hadn't really thought about that. Maybe it was just being numb after the first half. But, yeah, that is it is a little bit strange. But I haven't heard anything. I wouldn't read too much into it, I don't think. Maybe it's just Eddie shuffling the pack.
Yeah, I guess if he'd have done anything that Eddie'd been particularly, disapproving of, he wouldn't have been in the matchday squad for yesterday's game. So it's either something else like a minor injury, or it's just tactical to do with the cards, whatever it is. Anyway, get onto the game. We don't have to do any preamble with this week. Unfortunately, it was a very early goal. I was actually surprised. We were, because when you're in a match, you don't always get all the little stats and the information straight away. And it was only later on the train, and we were having a little discussion about when did we think how many seconds the goal was scored. I said I thought it was 14 seconds, but it was actually 44 seconds according to most stats I've seen. And it just seemed to happen. Well, it did happen quickly, and the actual the process of the goal being scored was Kyle Walker, who spent the entire afternoon just hugging that touchline on his own, waiting for the ball to come to him, and then coming inside. He advanced down the right wing, sent in a curling cross. It was a good cross, beyond our defence, but not beyond Harry Kane, who had to kind of swivel, and they showed quite a decent clip or replay on Match of the Day, where you can see that it looked like the heel of his boot, the studs on the heel of his boot got a touch. So he can add that goal to his tally. I think he's the top scorer in the Premier League now. And it may have gone in anyway. And we were saying on the train on the way back as well that did it go straight in? And then you've seen it's been credited to him, so you suspect that he must have had some sort of touch. If that goal had been scored after 20 minutes or later on in the game, I think that it wouldn't have looked as bad for us as it did, because it was scored so early. But that said, we didn't defend it brilliantly, although a good cross, and Walker had a good game. Kane, obviously, and as we saw even more, I thought, yesterday than at Dean Court, where he got a hat-trick, but he just looked deadlier yesterday. Is really... I mean, he impressed me a lot in both games, particularly yesterday. And the other thing, of course, was that it just put us completely on the back foot, didn't it? Yeah,
I think going back to, I don't know, maybe the 25th, 30th second, I think what happened was that we had a ball pumped through, or a back pass, I can't remember which one it was, and Max Gradle chased it for some reason. Towards the goalkeeper, and it didn't look like there was any way he was going to ever get on the end of it. I don't quite know, maybe it was just a little bit of exuberance chasing that ball. But as soon as he did that, that's when we then became in trouble, because the ball, as you say, got played out to Walker on the right. Gradle was nowhere near back to get him back to tackle him, and poor old Charlie Daniels was left in a bit of a pickle, because he had the other right-hand side player, I can't remember who it was, who he was marking. So he either had to go towards the ball and leave the other guy, or let it kind of develop. And he was kind of in a no man's land, really. And obviously he let it develop, and the ball came in. I thought, watching it live, that Kane actually got quite a decent touch on it. but it doesn't look like he did on the replays. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, he wasn't far from being offside either. But I think I'm grasping at straws there, to be honest. And was it the best bit of defending from Francis? I don't know. Maybe not. And it was just no fault for Boric, I don't think. It was right in the corner. It was obviously it was the complete opposite of what happened at Dean Court when we scored after 46 seconds or whatever it was. But obviously it didn't turn out the same way as it did then. And it just set the tone for the entire game. Yeah,
that was the thing about comparing it with Richie's goal at Dean Court, which I believe was 49 seconds.
Right, okay.
In that game, we scored early, and we briefly, well, I certainly did briefly thought, there's going to be a little shock on the cards here. When they scored early yesterday, I thought there's definitely not going to be a shock on the cards here. There's, highly likely to be only one winner from this position, and we hadn't even seen out the first minute.
I mean, one of our likely weapons, of course, was there under pressure to get points to catch up with Leicester. One of our weapons was to frustrate them and hope that they get a bit. The crowd might get on them and it'd all get a bit nervy. And just that whole thing just evaporated in that 1 second, didn't it? So yes, it was uphill after that.
Yeah, Francis. I mean, it's much easier being the striker in that position, because as the defender you're always worried about the own goal, and he didn't get a touch to it, and it never looks great for a defender when a goal's scored like that. He could have put it in himself quite easily. So, and I thought what you said about the way that Charlie Daniels suddenly found himself isolated, I think they played this tactic a lot yesterday. With Rose and Walker on one side, and Dembele and Dyer they sort of just seemed to gang up on our wing backs and just go beyond them, or they go two men onto like Charlie Daniels, for example, would advance with the ball to both Rose and Walker. Rose and Dembele would be there. They'd be on them, and then as soon as they lost the ball, as soon as Charlie Daniels lost the ball, Spurs would have the extra man, and they were able to break out. And we, that was. I mean, Pochettino's got a growing reputation for his tactical acumen, or so is Eddie Howe. But Pochettino's obviously higher up the league and a little bit more experienced, and that may or may not be tactical genius, but I probably wouldn't have thought of it. And it worked a treat for them, and it was one of the many reasons that they were able to dominate the entire game, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, what you said about Walker having virtually the freedom of the entire right hand half of the pitch, I can't remember a game where I've seen that so much. It was like every time the ball went out to him, he had no one within 20 yards of him. And given time like that, good quality players will put you under severe pressure. I think we can say what we like about Bournemouth yesterday, but you have to put it in the context of, I thought Spurs were absolutely tremendous. Easily the best side I've seen this season, both times we've played them. At times yesterday it was like they had 12 men on the pitch, especially in the first half when it was, when the heat of the battle was really on. I thought Dyer was absolutely fantastic. I thought Ali was absolutely fantastic. I mean, none of their players had bad games. They were all absolutely bang up for it. We were slightly off the pace and they basically killed us. It was... it was strange, but the Walker thing was how we couldn't get someone closer to him. I don't know. I'm not obviously I'm not a football manager or a tactician. I just say what I see, and I still don't know why we can never get anyone close to him. It was strange.
Yeah, that was I guess Max Gradle and Charlie Daniels' side of the pitch, but the way they used the central midfielders as well kind of made it more difficult. But yeah, he just... Well, I mean, we were on that side, our fans, weren't they, in the first half? And you just would... I'd be following the play in the middle of the park, and I don't know. I'm imagining this is not what happened to the players, but I'd be following the play in the middle of the park, and then the ball would go out that way to to the left hand side of the pitch. You looked at it, and I think, that's a bad pass. That's going out for a throw. And then I'd see Kyle Walker standing there, just waiting for the ball. I thought, I didn't realise he was there. I'm sure the Bournemouth players must have realised after it happened a couple of times. But
he just ran up and down the line, didn't he?
It was an effective tactic. Yeah. So anyway, one of the many things that killed us yesterday. To be honest, I've made 0 notes between the first goal and the second goal. I mean, apart from it was all Tottenham, and we didn't really seem to get very much joy at all getting out of our half. And then, before we knew it, they scored again. And this was, I thought, it was a good goal from their point of view.
Oh, yeah.
From our point of view, it was a bad goal, the worst one we conceded of the afternoon, I thought, anyway. Dele Alli, who, like you said, they all played well yesterday. I mean, he impressed me a lot yesterday, the way he played. Was given, I felt, way too much room in the midfield, and then he was able to just slip that very skillfully weighted ball through to Harry Kane in just the right place. And Shearer went through it, I think, last night on Match of the Day, how he was on his bike, as Shearer said, and was able to just, in one, didn't need a touch, just swept it into the net. I'm starting to think I made a bit of a mistake, laughing my head off in the post Newcastle podcast about how they gave Josh King and Lewis Graham and Matt Ritchie so much space for King's goal, and since then we've had Gylfi Sigurdsson's goal and also Harry Kane's second goal yesterday, both of which have been, well, from our point of view, not great defending in terms of just not getting tight on the men. Sigurdsson for the first goal and Dele for yesterday's goal. And I'm pretty sure my making hay at Newcastle's expense isn't the reason we've been conceding those goals, but I'm starting to feel like I'm getting egg on my face at the moment, because that was, I thought it was, like I said, the worst goal we conceded yesterday afternoon.
It was, but you have to give Spurs credit again. I mean, where Ali was lurking, I believe it's called between the lines, and he was just kind of stood there, and they won the ball, and it was played through to him. So, either a defender has to push up to pick him up, or a midfielder has to drop. Or you say it's extremely clever play from Ali to find the space, to trust in the fact that your midfielder is going to win a tackle and be able to lay a ball off. And as soon as that ball went through to Ali, we were in real trouble. I don't really have too much criticism of. I think it was Francis again, wasn't it? He was the one who was sort of exposed by the through ball. I don't think too many defenders would have been able to do anything about that. Great finish again by Kane. Can't really say too much more about it than that. It was a bit like, also it reminded me in retrospect of it wasn't John Joe Shelvey, but John Joe Shelvey put the through ball through for Newcastle. Perez, that's it, yes. It was a bit sort of similar to that, which again was a great ball. You look at it and think, it's bad defending, but defenders can't keep every single chance out. It was sort of classic forward play, and if we'd have scored a goal like that, we'd have been saying, wow, it was absolutely fantastic. It was, I don't really think it was that bad defending. We were just under pressure quite a lot by then, and it just paid in the end. The one thing I thought watching it at full speed, and I'm not really being able to pick this up on the replay, is I thought when Ali played the through ball, if Boruc had have come off his line straight away and have been very positive about it, I think he might have got there. And I'm not sure whether that's right or wrong, or if anybody else kind of thought that. But that was my immediate thought as Ali played the through ball. I may be being a bit harsh on Boruc, and he may not have got there, and it may have ended up being a red card. But that was my initial thought. But I don't know. We'll never know, obviously. But it was 2-0 and well deserved. Yeah,
that was Boruc's nadir this season against Tottenham at home. He coughed it up a couple of times, I think, and Kane scored a hat trick. And well, then Boris was out of the team for a little while, but he's played well since then. And I mean, he didn't really have loads to do yesterday, despite Spurs having plenty of possession and quite a few chances, but mainly it was just picking the ball out of the net. I guess if he'd have come off his line and Kane had got there first, I mean, you mentioned obviously the possibility of red cards, penalties and stuff. If Kane had finished anyway, which you'd back him to do so, then we could well be sitting here blaming Boris for the goal. So goalkeepers are always exposed to those kind of situations, and sometimes they're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't. I'm just on Kane. I mean, obviously he's playing for the other team, but I think we've seen some good players this season. Obviously, we're in the Premier League now. I think when we saw Vardy, even though he'd only just really started on his run of scoring, I think that was the first goal actually, that penalty that Steve Cook gave away. You could see the pace was a huge factor. Kane, I was surprised how quick he was yesterday. I don't know if it's just my position higher up than I am at Dean Court and able to view it differently, and you sort of can see how fast he was, and they were all pretty quick. I mean, even Josh King didn't have it, well, fair to say, didn't have it all his own way. That's possibly an understatement in terms of getting to the ball. Kane is just... I don't know if he's got everything, but he's got an awful lot of what it takes. I mean, he's got pace. He's obviously got finishing. His movement. I think one of our defenders, maybe Cook or Francis, I read today them talking about how he is able to time his runs perfectly, and and they think he's offside, but then he's just in the right spot when the ball is played to be on the margin of offside, but not quite offside. I mean, I think he's just sort of quickly running through my head. He's the best striker I've seen this season. Yeah.
I think he's had, how many chances has he had against us? 5 or 6, and he's scored 5. I mean, that really kind of sums it up. I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Vardy and Leicester. I mean, the one thing I can't understand is why Spurs aren't ahead of Leicester in the league. The game, I mean, I know you can't just always take it just on the game, the two games you see against each of the sides. But to me, Spurs seem a league ahead of Leicester. I didn't, to be honest, I didn't actually go to the home game, but I went to the away game, and they didn't look very impressive at all. They couldn't score against us with 10 men for half an hour. They sort of struggled to break us down, and although we did defend very well, just as a side thought, I can't for the life of me see how Leicester are ahead of Spurs, but there we go. So I haven't really seen the best of Vardy. And then I suppose you're looking at the sort of like your Sturridges and your Welbecks and your Rooneys, and you never know if they're going to be fit. So yes, I would agree, definitely. Kane looks the pick of the bunch.
Yeah, I suppose as a neutral, as it were, in the Spurs Leicester contest, I'd like. We'll get back to Bournemouth in a minute. I'd like Leicester to win the title just because of the sort of fairy tale aspect of it. If that's not too kind of vomit inducing. And but then if you had to choose to watch either of those teams week in, week out, you definitely watch Spurs. With Leicester, I don't watch them often enough to really make this as an accurate comment, but you get the feeling it's a triumph of tactical organisation over everything else, whereas with Spurs it's a triumph of both tactical organisation and a sort of quality, flair, style, etc. The things you tend to associate Spurs with. So I think if either of those won the league, I wouldn't mind. It's nice to see somebody different win it. Anyway, back to the game. I guess most of us, I certainly did, after 15 minutes, feared another high-scoring defeat. Spurs seem to have endless chances, although most of them didn't trouble Boris, but were very close several times to getting the third goal. We just were unable to fashion any chances. Afobe again was well, I've written two-dimensional down here. He was that player that people are looking at thinking, well, you know, he does score goals, although he hasn't scored for a couple of games now, and the longer it goes on, and it hasn't gone on for long, he's scored 4 goals in 9 games in the Premier League, so what can you say to that, apart from that's a good return? But, you know, he's quiet otherwise. King was not getting enough quality service, and they seem to have plenty of pace at the back to deal with him, and were well organised, and we just weren't, well, you've already said Spurs were streets ahead of us, and they certainly have been in the 2 games that we've played against them, and they are in with a very good, in with a good chance, the best chance they've had since I've been born, I think, which was, it's fair to say, quite a while ago, winning the title. We on the other hand, and I've seen us being slated by quite a lot of our fans, we weren't at our best yesterday, were we?
No, I mean, I think one thing I notice is that generally if Sermon has a good game, we tend to have a good game. And he just was not in the game at all because he was, for whatever reasons, tactically, or because he was playing against better players, he was just swamped, and just never, every time he got the ball, he was either rushing, or he was tackled, or he didn't have anyone to pass it to, and it was it's just like watching a different team to what we used to get him to watch. I think there's I'm getting a bit worried about Afobe. I know, yes, he scored 4 out of 4 goals in 9 games, but he looks lost to me. He looks like he doesn't know what he's supposed to be doing. And him and King don't strike me as a partnership. I think King's has been a revelation the last month or so. I was sort of hoped he was going to come good, and I think he's showing now that he's capable of becoming a very good player. Afobe might do, but I just don't think he looks totally lost. He doesn't look like he knows what he's supposed to be doing, and that's obviously, he looks very low on confidence, and that's affecting his performance. He just seems to be sort of jogging around, not doing much. I'm not quite sure what his role actually is supposed to be. I mean, I know it's only 9 games, but forward pairings tend to kind of gel quickly, or they don't. I mean, I can remember when a good example for us would be when Kermorgan came from Charlton. I think it was in January, and him and Graben just clicked just straight away, and they were a fantastic force for the rest of that season. Maybe the problem is that, I don't know, maybe King and Afobe are too similar. I don't know. Although Afobe doesn't strike me as having lightning pace. No. We haven't really seen. If you were to ask me, I couldn't really actually tell you what type of player Afobe is, because we just haven't really seen very much of it. And he scored 4 goals, which is fantastic. Not going to. So he obviously knows where the goal is. But that's going to be a little job for Eddie, isn't it? To sort of I'm sure he's got an idea of what role he wants Afobe to play, but to get him to understand it and start playing it is a rather urgent in Eddie's inbox, isn't it? I think. Yeah,
he obviously Eddie wasn't impressed yesterday because he pulled him at half time. So he tends to only make those kind of, wholesale's taking it a bit far, but significant changes at half time when he's not a happy man. I mean, Southampton away was the most striking example of that this season. I think there's been one other occasion, I can't remember which one it was. It might have been Stoke at home, I can't remember. And then yesterday, and you kind of knew that, Kane was out on the pitch for a minute or two at half time with Dan Hodges, and then rapidly disappeared down the dressing room, and then him and Grabs came on in the second half. But Afobe, I guess we can't really judge him until next season, and that Eddie won't hesitate to start with Wilson and maybe King, or maybe Graben, whoever, if he plays 2 up front next season, or even, any other combination. He doesn't be guided by the transfer fee. But I suspect at the moment, Eddie's probably thinking, I can do something with this player. He must have thought that when he bought him. I mean, in the case of somebody like Glenn Murray, it was almost as if Eddie's hand was eventually forced, although he had coveted him for a while. but then he couldn't perhaps use him in the way that he wanted because we didn't have a goal scoring pacey striker, and also obviously Murray's a lot older than somebody like Afobe. With Afobe, he's he's got plenty of potential, and Eddie is good at 9 times out of 10 getting that out of players and making it. Quite often it takes a few months. I mean, with King, it's a good example this season. Stanislas and perhaps Gosling going back to last season and then into this season. You've seen the time that it's taken for those players to come through. Afobe, you think what kind of a player is he? He's a good finisher. I think that's fair to say. All the goals, as I've banged on about, have been scored with his first touch, as it were. He's not required a first touch, just finish them straight away. Pace, I expect him to have more. At the moment, that's not in evidence, and that's not something you can really change. You might be able to change it, by a tiny percentage, but not something he isn't going to turn into Josh King style burning pace at any point. The only other thing that could be an issue is he fit enough to play the Eddie Howe system? I mean, he came into the team on the back of playing most of Wolves' games this season, I think. So you say he was match fit, but then, obviously we always top these running statistics and stuff like that. So he might need to do a bit of extra over the summer to get himself in shape. But who knows? Yeah, I think we'll have to reserve judgment on him until next season. I'm just going back to the first half. I've mined the match reports and the online footage to see if we had any chances to speak of. We didn't really have much. I think Max Gradle took a free kick, and Josh King headed that one onto the roof of the net. We had a corner. Matt Ritchie took it. Steve Cook, that one was on Match of the Day last night. I talk about mining anything for us. I mean, the guys at Match of the Day were, I think, really having to study the footage very, very carefully to find anything to put us in a good light in the first half. And we were just never going to score a goal in that game, were we?
No. A little burst in the first 10 minutes of the second half, I think. But no, it was just like. It was just like watching a different team. It was a bit like kind of when we played teams towards in last season we were a lot better than, and we turned on a performance, and it was very difficult for some of those teams to make any headway, and it was just a little bit like that. We were sort of given a bit of a taste of our own medicine, and I mean it was. I've been trying to think actually. There was a game. I think it must have been in the early 90s, when we played Reading away at the old Elm Park. And Jimmy Quinn I think it was Pulis' first season as manager, and Jimmy Quinn had gone to Reading from us the previous season. And I went to that game. I can't remember us having a single effort on goal, and I don't think we got into their half too frequently. So that's about what I can liken it to, which is pretty bad. Yeah, it was such a shame. There was just nothing really to get excited about. And I don't know. I've seen it said that the players they've given up. Well, not given up, but they're the pressure's off because we're safe, and they're looking forward to the summer holidays. And you only have to drop your standards by a couple of percent, and you'll get a beating, and that's basically what happened.
Yeah, I think the accusation that the players had taken their foot even slightly off the pedal would be refuted by the players and the manager, although Eddie didn't mince his words in the post-match interviews, and a couple of others, Simon Francis, Steve Cook, were basically holding their hands up and say we didn't play well enough today. But I think there's an argument to be made for the kind of the players subconsciously taking their foot off the pedal. I don't think it will last. I think they'll be so sick with themselves after a couple of defeats like yesterday's. I mean, who knows what's going to happen against Man City? We could turn it around, or we could get another little thump in. But after one or two games like that, regardless of whether they think the job's done or not, they're not going to want to suffer those kind of defeats, because it just isn't a pleasant experience. You don't have to go on for 7 or 8 games going into the end of the season.
No.
But yeah, I mean, they got to 38 points. There was clearly something riding on that. Not more than, but alongside Premier League survival. You could tell by I read the expressions on the players on the pitch after the Swansea game to mean that they'd achieved something that they'd been aiming for, and this may have been the thing that they were, because Eddie said last season after the Middlesbrough game, which was a year ago today, I saw on Twitter earlier, that they'd now reached the total that would allow him to give the green light to the trip to Dubai. And so maybe he'd said, I want 38 points, and then you can go to Dubai. That was achieved last week. I mean, I don't know that for sure. I'm just speculating. So having done that, and then having seen the 3 guys, Richie, Cook, who was the other one? Was it Francis? Sermon on Sky Sports Goals on Sunday, sort of saying, I think we're safe now. That is going to have, even like you said, that small percentage impact on performance, attitude, etc. It's not deliberate. In some ways, it's inevitable. I don't think it will last. I think we'll find our feet again, because they'll get they will soon get extremely sick of losing badly like they did yesterday. But I definitely think, like I said, there is an argument to be made that was a factor in our performance. Wasn't it?
I think so. I mean, I was down a couple of percentage as a fan yesterday, I think, because I was thinking about this earlier, last 8, 9 years, 9 seasons, we haven't had many games where it's not really, it's not really mattered. There's been nothing kind of riding on it. And I felt that kind of yesterday. And in some ways it's good. But I didn't feel the pressure that I've been feeling on virtually every game for the last 9 years when we've been involved in promotions or relegations or great escapes or whichever.
The list goes on. The list goes on,
and pressure is as good a motivation as anything, really. And knowing that it's if we lose this game, it's going to be a nightmare. And I just thought yesterday when I left, I thought, this is doesn't really matter what happens today. And I'm sure that the players, just a small element of that was enough. They've got more than enough, credit in the bank for the last few seasons that, even yesterday isn't going to even start chipping away at that, is it? It's, I don't think it will last.
The White Bear Micropub on Southbourne Grove is a proud supporter of AFC Bournemouth and sponsor of all departments. Head to the Bear for real ales, locally produced food and plenty of good conversations about the Cherries. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk. We already spoke about the changes Eddie made at half-time. Nuno Kane came on for an off-colour Harry Arter, Lewis Grabban for a similarly off-colour, although we're not quite sure how to assess Benicofobé's play aside from measure it by goals. But Grabs came on, and I suspect in the usual way that football has of creating these circumstances, Grabban's appearance on the pitch for Phobé was welcomed by most Bournemouth fans. There's a possibility we could have gone with one up front, but Eddie decided not to. I'd imagine the tone of conversation in the dressing room was probably not the most pleasant of the season after the first half yesterday. I mean, in every single interview, Eddie afterwards referred to the way that, we were just not good enough in the first half. And he's certainly a manager who will give credit where credit's due, and he won't criticise the players unduly. But he, I think when you watch him and, he's very measured and careful about what he says to the press, but you can pick little bits up, and that was definitely one where I was glad I wasn't in the dressing room.
Yes.
But we picked up a bit at the start of the second half, didn't we?
Yeah, it was a bit like was it the Stoke game where I think we changed a couple at half time. In fact, it was almost identical because we were bright for the first sort of 5, 6, 7 minutes and then conceded. But I thought Graben was an instant improvement on Afobe. Gave us a bit of presence and a bit of threat. Again, I'm not sure that him and King are going to long term a good partnership, because a lot of times yesterday they seem to be making similar kind of runs and getting into similar positions, and sort of a couple of times they got in each other's way. But that was definitely an improvement. I think I think Graben's starting to look a bit more match fit now. I think when he first came to us, he didn't seem fit. I remember seeing him at the Portsmouth game, and there's a couple of times he came there and he sort of ran towards the corner near where I was standing, and he was pretty out of breath, and he wasn't looking match fit at all. But I think he's getting there. I think he's looked pretty sharp on occasions where he's come on. I thought he looked very sharp at Newcastle, and I thought he looked pretty sharp yesterday. O'Kane, he was O'Kane, really, wasn't he? He was neat and tidy in places. He gave the ball away a couple of times, and then had to turn around and chase back as he does. And overall, probably an improvement on Arthur, I think. Yesterday, and I thought he did okay. I've always liked O'Kane. I think he's very unlucky not to play more last season when Sermon and Arthur were undroppable and never got injured. So I think he was a touch unlucky. I think he could have had a big hand last year. But yeah, definitely an improvement.
Yeah, we had a fair bit of play in the final third, Spurs third. I think we might have had a couple of corners, a few balls into the box, never really got on the end of them. They defended them well. But it was just more positive. Obviously, our fans were in the stand at that end of the pitch, and it just all seemed like we were going to maybe... Game. I guess we just hoped we'd nick one at 2-1. You never know, but it didn't happen. And then I was, again, surprised when I actually looked at the timing of the goal that it was 7 minutes into the second half. It seemed quicker. I think Lamela found Kane looking for his second hat-trick against us this season. He strikes the ball well, Harry Kane. There was one later on when he struck it and you thought that's just going to go wide. It did go wide, but it seemed to kind of curl back in. He's one of them players who really... has a really good finish on him, and he struck it from quite far out. This one that led to the goal after Lamela had passed it to him, and hard at Boretz, and Boretz parried it really, and goalies get criticised for putting it in the wrong area and stuff, but when it's coming at you that hard, it was probably moving a bit in the air. It was very difficult to catch. He managed to save it, and then, well, I mean, my gran could have finished that one, Christian Eriksen. I guess the only thing, I mean, you could have a pop at Boris if you wanted, but I'm reluctant to do so. The only thing was that you could criticise us for with that one, in terms of the actual ball going in the net, there was no one anywhere near Christian Eriksen, was there? No, it was. I think we could have closed Kane down a bit better. He seemed to have quite a lot of space. I think O'Kane might have been the nearest to him. Maybe could have got out there and put a bit more pressure on him. I'm not going to completely let Boris off scot-free on this one, I'm afraid. I appreciate what you're saying. It was going quick. It was a little bit of swerve and a bit of dip on it. But I think if you make a save and the ball arrives exactly where the striker would like it to be, I think you've got to be at least a quarter at fault.
He could have made an attempt to catch it. Maybe he could have made an attempt to at least parry it to the side if it was a bit difficult to parry it behind for a corner. I don't know, being ultra critical maybe, but I think he could have done just a touch better. But it was not inevitable, but it came as no great surprise, did it? It was. I think even their fans had they didn't celebrate it particularly wildly, did they? I think even they thought that the game's up now.
Yeah, that was the goal. I mean, as you would expect, when a game goes to 3-0, you tend to think. I mean, there's examples every season where a team comes back from 3-0 and either draws or wins, but those are rare. And looking obviously at the way the two teams were playing and all that, that was the goal that you thought, well, there is no way back, and let's just hope we can keep the score down, maybe nick a little consolation. Obviously that didn't happen, and get out of there with some pride intact, which I guess to a certain extent we did. We didn't concede any more goals. As I already mentioned, we sort of persistently struggled to get a decent either final ball into the box, or when we did get a ball into the box, it was always one of their players, be it from a cross, a corner, a free kick, that got there first, and they managed to get away. They didn't really seem to make any even little errors in those situations. Yeah. And we just, they had a few more chances as well. Yeah. But we just were. We weren't really even banging on the door, were we, at any point?
No. I think I'd like to mention this point for Adam Smith. I thought he had a very good game. Probably our best. I mean, he played sort of nearest to what he usually does, in the fact that he did get the ball a few times, and he cut inside and he went on runs. And it was one particularly good run he had in the second half, about halfway through, where he sort of nearly got through. But he was guilty of occasionally getting into a reasonable position and then putting in a poor ball. I think Graben got a couple of decent positions, and one time he was a little bit unlucky. One time he put in a poor cross. Pugh did his little party piece where he tried to...
That was quite funny, actually. He tried to do it about 3 times. It worked the first 2 times, but it failed the 3rd time, didn't it?
Yeah, well, I think it might even have been more than that. And the defender just stood there and let him do it and then tackled him and ran away with the ball. The thing is, as you say, they didn't make any mistakes at all, did they?
No.
I mean, most teams at some point, especially if you're hassling them, will make a stray pass, or there'll be some kind of defensive hesitancy if you put them under a bit of pressure. But there was just none of that. I can't remember them really doing a false thing. They had a couple of chances that maybe they should have done a bit better with. I think Dele Alli missed one from a lovely move towards the end, which he sort of scuffed wide. So fortunately, that was about the only thing they messed up was their finishing from time to time. They saw out. I mean, I think last 10 minutes they just saw it out, just kept the ball, and we. I definitely like to make a mention for Smith. I think he was probably our best player on the day, in that he came closest to playing his normal game. Matt Ritchie didn't have any impact on the game, which is quite rare for him. I mean, I think he was in there doing a lot of defending as he does from time to time. It's one of them games you just can't really point to anyone really as have. It reminded me a bit of the Norwich game in a way, but I think the Norwich game was worse because taking into account the standard of the opposition. But I think at the Norwich away game, no one played well, and it was kind of similar to that. Just that the whole team had an off day. Because they were against, at the end of the day, they were against a team and individual players that were just better than them.
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, there's no arguments really in terms of the result and in terms of who was the better team. Yeah. Probably from 1 to 11, as it were, although they don't wear 1 to 11 anymore. You mentioned Mark Pugh, who came on for Max Gradle with 20 minutes to go. I saw Gradle doing a few little stretches, but I'm assuming he's going to be all right and available for selection after the international break. I imagine he's going off the Ivory Coast. But that left us, of course, with 0 subs to go. And you said about how they saw it out in the last 10 minutes, because King did his. Well, I thought it was hamstring. I think they said on the internet today it was his calf. You could see that he'd done something because at one point the ball went up and you thought, well, King's going to be first to that. And although I said, their defenders were speedy, I mean, King was just nowhere near it. The guy just, ran about 4 yards in front of him and got the ball. And I thought, well, he's, maybe they should take him off, but. There's obviously some sort of communication between him and the bench, and he was saying, "No, I'm all right to stay on."
Yeah,
but he's had to withdraw from the Norway squad, which is a shame for him, isn't it? Because he's obviously hit some form, and Eddie's stuck with him, and he's kind of hopefully, certainly at the moment, looks like another one of those players Eddie's getting the best out of, and gets the call up again to play for his country. Might have got another cap, and now it's all evaporated, hasn't it?
Yeah. I did actually notice that. Yeah, I remember the incident you mean where he appeared like he had kind of given up, but it was he was rubbing his calf and stretching it, limping a bit, and who knows? I mean, I'm no expert on calves, but it's one of them ones. It could be it's a minor strain and it's a precaution. He's been pulled out. Or it could be one of those ones where he's out for a month. I don't know. It's he's becoming sort of really the last month. He's becoming sort of instrumental to the way we've played, and he's showing quality and sort of physical athleticism as well. And he's comparing him to the start of the season. There's no comparison to the level of performances he's putting in.
No, there's probably quite a significant list over the years, but he's certainly up there in being one of the players that's made as the highest percentage of fans eat their words during the course of a season. Or certainly, I mean, I don't know. You'd have to listen back to the early season podcast. I probably was measured in what I said about him, but I may have had darker thoughts in my own head. Those first few games.
I think he was instrumental in our dreadful performance at Norwich. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, but it raises an interesting point about and we spoke about Afobe as well, and Grabs a bit. Our options up front, I guess the forwards at the moment are Grabban, Afobe. King, Murray, and it looks increasingly likely we're going to see a little bit of Callum Wilson before the end of the season, which is causing much excitement. So, I mean, who knows what will happen in the summer, but out of those strikers that we currently have at the club, and if Eddie goes with 2 up front at the start of next season, all are fit, etc., I mean, you would have said probably a month ago that he would go with Wilson and Afobe. Now, perhaps not so sure. I'm not going to ask you to say who you think it will be. I
don't mind.
Well, feel free to do so. But it is. It's I guess a bit of a puzzle for Eddie to solve, to find, like you mentioned about partnerships, to find his sort of number one forward partnership out of those players. I don't know if he'll bring anybody else in now. I mean, there's other areas you get the feeling that we'd probably be more likely to want to strengthen in, and but certainly finding a partnership that's really effective is going to be important going into next season, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there's another option. I mean, I think I don't think Glenn Murray is going to play much of a role in the future. I could be wrong, but I wouldn't be too sad about that. Good player and has obviously scored goals elsewhere, but I don't really think and of course you can never forget his goal against Chelsea and a couple of goals here and there, but I don't really think he's had much of an impact. In fact, he's put in some pretty poor performances. I think at Leicester away he was particularly poor. So I don't think he's going to have much of a factor. There's another thing which is, and I think I've said this before, that the best we played this season, and this might have been updated, but it was when we played West Ham away, and in the second half we played Wilson and Gradle through the middle, and they looked pretty.
I thought you were going to say Lee Tomlin then for a moment.
Well, he might be coming back, and he's banging him in for fun for Bristol City, isn't he? But he looked a decent player to me. I mean, I'd welcome him back. I mean, maybe there are those that wouldn't, but if he's going to come back and contribute, then I don't have a problem with that. I think there's also I think King has got abilities as a winger as well. So I think there is quite a pack to shuffle. I think obviously Wilson is going to be the sort of the number one. Assuming, of course, that when he comes back, he's not suffering. There's been, he's not lost all of his pace, or assuming he comes back as something like the same player he was, which is maybe not a guarantee. As I've said earlier, Phobie's the worry for me. But it's very early, and I hope I'm eating my words, and he's scoring regularly and contributing to the team. Very quickly. Graben, I'm very happy with the way Graben's going. Whether he's going to ever be quite the player who's going to demand to start every week and score 20 goals in the Premier League, I don't know. He might do. He might not. I think he's got as good a chance of doing that here than he has at any other club. And obviously, I hope he does. But it's a good problem to have. And as you say, I think there are other areas of the pitch that maybe need more care and more strengthening during the summer.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the summer, as always. But I guess that's a conversation for a bit later in the season. I don't really want to go through the rest of the game. There was just mainly more of us struggling, and then, well, I think they probably took their foot off the gas a bit. But like you said, they just saw the game out. So I've made a very short list of positives to come out of the game. It was quite difficult, but most of them we've talked about already. There was obviously we talked about Grabban and O'Kane, who I thought both played well. The only other positive from a personal point of view is I can now ditch some of the ridiculous superstitions which I'd managed to accrue during our run of good form during March. So they can all go out the window now, much to my wife's relief. Apart from that, not much really. So we've got Dubai coming up. I think 10 of the players are off on international trips, so you assume that'll keep them fit. Yeah, I mean, obviously another sign of the progress that we've made as a club. No Cherries in the England squad, which I think for most of us, being England fans, would be the ultimate in terms of international recognition. And before yesterday, we'd have all argued that somebody like Daniels, Francis, Sermon perhaps deserved to sneak into the squad. I was, I guess, secretly hoping that somebody would withdraw. I mean, sometimes they actually are injured and withdraw. Sometimes they're not, but they just cry off, don't they? And one of our lads would get drafted in. On the other hand, putting yesterday's performance to one side, with Daniels and Francis, and I'm not saying that the door is closed for them, but going into a major tournament, and trying to, I guess, select the squad, and there's obviously some players on the fringes, bringing in one of two players who are, I think Simon Francis is in his 30s, and Charlie Daniels, I think he's 29, isn't he? I guess was always going to be less likely than if the two of them were in their early 20s, wasn't it?
Yeah, I must admit, yesterday has kind of brought it into a bit sharper focus, but I never really thought. I mean, we don't know what Roy Hodgson thinks, but I never really thought either of them were going to get in, to be perfectly honest. And I can see why. I mean, we see them week in, week out, and we know that they have played well. But we are a defence that has conceded quite a lot of goals at the end of the day, and are players like that really going to make the national side? I don't know. I think we'll never know. And again, I could be completely wrong, and I'll be absolutely delighted if I am. But I could never really see. I could never really see either of them getting in, and maybe the age has got something to do with it. It's a little bit late to be making your debut. I know it does happen, but I don't know. I think that was a hot air as much as anything else.
Yeah, it used to happen 20 years ago under Terry Venables when he had 2 years of friendlies leading up to Euro 96. It doesn't seem to happen. So he was playing players like Barry Venison and Neil Ruddock, just giving them a kind of token cap. It doesn't. I guess with the actual requirement to qualify and then a few friendlies in which you actually have to have a look and see what kind of a team you've got, it's less likely to be dealing out. Just sort of giving a cap as a reward. But anyway, hasn't happened yet. Probably now won't see one of our players get capped this season. Next season, who knows? It'd be lovely if, like I say, if Callum Wilson came back and started banging them in and got called up. We'd all love it. So
absolutely, yeah.
So that'd be great. But that's something to look forward to in the future. So yeah, we've got the international break, and then I think 7 more games remain. I can't see us capitulating like we did yesterday in all 7 of those. Hopefully, we'll pull off a little surprise, even if it's just a draw against City. And then you look down the list of fixtures, I guess the ones that stick out would be West Brom at home, Villa away. You never know what's going to happen. I mean, there's other games like Everton away, Liverpool at home, even Man United away. You think, there's potential there if we are at the top of our game and perhaps they're not. I mean, Liverpool, for example, you never know which one of their teams is going to turn up. In fact, the two faces of Liverpool were seen yesterday in the first and the second half against Southampton. So hopefully the second half of Liverpool will turn up at Dean Court. And I can see us going on to finish. I'm much more bold about making these predictions now. I think we're virtually safe to finish, in the mid-40s in terms of points. And, well, I'd be more than happy with that.
Oh, I think more than happy doesn't really quite do it justice, does it? That'll just be just fantastic, and just the the continuation of everything that's sort of happened in the last since Eddie came back, really. Let's be perfectly honest. But I think most people, me included, would have said, as long as we're 17th, that's absolutely, absolute joyous celebration. I predicted at the start of the season we'd finish 14th, and that was based on obviously a little bit of optimism and a little bit of thinking, well, actually we are quite a good side, and not knowing exactly what the standard of the opposition is going to be like. I mean, I think yesterday to me brought home the fact that there are some very, very good teams in the Premier League, but also I think there are some very average ones. And I'm not going to sit here and reel off the sort of the games we've won and where we've been easily the better side, but I think there are some poor sides in there, and I think Eddie's the kind of manager who will, by and large, buy sensibly. May take the odd punt here and there, like your Turbeys and people like that. And if they come off, great. If they don't, there's no real harm done. And you can only hope that next season, hopefully we can finish 10th. If we finish 14th this, and just hope that the sort of improvement continues.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I guess if you look at the pattern of improvement under Eddie Howe, and adding further gloss to his CV with what he's achieved this season, although in a more of a low key way, not from our point of view, but probably it's not quite as glorious as winning the championship. No. And of course I forget, and then occasionally I remember with a little smile that we're going to have. Well, we talked about Wilson coming back. We've got Mings to return to the squad, so I guess we may not get the utter joy of seeing Royce Wiggins pull on a Cherries shirt on the pitch again. We've got Ryan Fraser, who may or may not return to the squad full time, but seems to have done. Well, he's injured at the moment, isn't he? But done very well
I suspect he will.
Yeah,
I think
that's three. Well, they always say it's like three new signings. Well, in Tyrone Mings' case, it will actually be as good as a new signing.
Yes.
Ryan Fraser hasn't been in the squad, so it'd be great to see him back. And
yes.
Wilson, we all want to see him back as well. And you mentioned Iturbe. I guess Eddie's thinking, well, I've got Ryan Fraser coming back. Who am I going to want more in the team?
Yeah. That's exactly who Iturbe reminded me of when I only saw him live. Against Portsmouth, I saw him I watched the Everton game on the telly, so I saw him live against Portsmouth, and he reminded me of Fraser, but not as good. So I think that's the Iturbe experiment is going to sort of end fairly quietly, I think.
We'll look forward to all of that and see what happens next season. But thanks for coming on the show tonight, Stephen. I think we've done a good job mining some relatively positive talk from an otherwise disappointing afternoon in North London. But thanks again for coming on the show, and have a happy Easter.
Okay, thank you very much. Speak to you again soon.
Great work there from Stephen, and apologies to him for ending our chat so abruptly. There was some minor domestic drama occurring at All Departments HQ at the time. During the international break, I'll be re-releasing a few archived podcast interviews from seasons past, so feel free to give those a listen. In the meantime, I hope you have a very happy Easter. So up the cherries in All Departments, and goodbye. All Departments is sponsored by the White Bear Micro Pub on Southbourne Grove, the perfect pre- and post-game venue to chat about the game, and only a 25-minute walk to the ground, or there's a bus stop right outside. Wear your AFCB shirt on any match day and receive 30p off each pint. Check out www.thewhitebear.co.uk.